companies are finding is that they're not liking the candidates that are actually getting picked. 85% of employers feel that they are not grabbing skilled talent. And of those that are skilled, they can only hold on to 7% of them. It's really, that's like the most disgusting aspect of this, I believe. 7 out of 10 hiring managers in a survey of 650 believe that ghost jobs are morally acceptable. Don't look each other in the eye. The third one is that they don't even turn the camera on during interviews. The fourth one is that they don't dress professionally. And the fifth one, at 19% of younger candidates are bringing their parents into the interview. If they are a college student, they are not counted as in participating in the labor force. I don't understand how a 15-year-old that's helping rake the leaves once a month is considered employed. That doesn't make sense. I've unfortunately had 2 friends that have lost their battle to mental health, and I faced it myself. But when I was working throughout the bank and the pandemic happened, there was a lot of businesses that started coming in, taking in very large PPP loans.
Damon Cassidy, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to speak with you. I've been following your journey very closely. It's fascinating. And above all else, it's incredibly inspiring. So I want to talk about your journey. I want to talk about what motivated you to make the life change that you made. I want to talk a little bit about America and society. And but first, I want to thank you for joining me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel very honored that the kind of guests that you have are very professional and thought-provoking and very interesting, so that you felt that I could provide value to your audience in that manner is I feel very grateful for that. So thank you very much as well.
I do. I really do. So let's start. You made a pivot in your life. You come from the world of corporate finance. Okay. The obvious question is you've moved into the world of podcasting and content creation. What prompted that change? What happened in your life? What happened in society? What were you seeing?
I think typically I give the answer of just breaking down a little bit of my experience at the bank, but I think because you talk more about psychology, which is actually the degree that I'm pursuing to become a psychotherapist, I'd like to dive a little bit into my childhood. I think a lot of my journey of what led me to today started right around when I was about 4 years old. My little brother was born, and right around the same couple months as that, my grandfather then died. So my mom, who I was very close with, naturally had to take care of my little brother and then grieve with the passing of her father. And so then my dad got sick right around that same time. So I developed what I now call, or my therapist calls, the parent voice inside of my mind. So because I didn't feel like I wanted to be a burden on my parents, I started being incredibly hard and difficult on myself. Right around when I was 7, my parents then got a divorce, and my dad was dealing with heart failure. So I saw the family structure collapse, as well as the thought of this superhuman as my father now being someone that we were told was going to pass away. So after that, I felt very much like I was responsible for my mom and my brother, as well as my dad, because I wanted to make sure that they all were doing okay. So that's a big burden at 7 years old. And again, I'm not blaming them in any way, but this is just naturally what a young person, as a defense mechanism, this is kind of what I began to play on. So as I got older, I continuously was trying to take myself out of the equation, not only in my family structure, but also in school and sports. I think that I had a natural gift for some of these things, but I tried to continuously dumb myself down because I didn't want to be in the spotlight. Very shy, very nervous, very hard on myself. As I got older, I ended up just graduating high school, and I went into the local bank. I was going to get a credit card so I could start building credit. I didn't get approved for the credit, but I got the job, which was like really kind of a wild situation. And through that experience, I started to see that I'm more similar to other people than I thought. I thought that I was not worth a lot of different things. But when you see behind the accounts that people have, you realize the person that's making $10 million and the person that's making $500 a week or something of that nature, overall, they're making similar decisions. They're trying to provide for their families. They're trying to put gas in their car. They're trying to buy food. we all shared these similarities. And I started to build some confidence off of this because I was able to have conversations with these individuals. And I started to realize that there are certain factors of myself that it's worth having a conversation. Unfortunately, about 2 years into my career, one of my closest friends lost a battle to mental health. So that largely put my mortality also in perspective. And I realized that there was a lot of sadness and anxiety and things that were built within myself. So I then shortly followed, had 3 months of severe anxiety, and I didn't know what was going to happen in my life. I had to drop everything I was doing. I couldn't watch TV, couldn't really do anything. I could hardly function as a human being. But through that, I continued to go to therapy, and I continued to not take any medication or anything of that nature. And that was just a personal choice, to be able to build myself up to the person that I believed deserved to be here on earth, that there was a lot of love that that little boy needed that I wasn't giving. And I wasn't allowing others to give to myself. So when I came out of that, it was almost like taking, one of the pills from the Matrix. It was, I saw the world in an entirely different perspective. And naturally, what I'm very grateful for that was just built into myself was this just absolute desire to always help others. I think it probably stemmed from watching a lot of superhero movies when I was a little kid. I remember at like 4 or 5, 6 years old, I was watching The Lord of the Rings with my dad. So you have a lot of these characters that are willing to risk everything to be able to help out the village or to help out society. And I think that that was just something that I wanted to do, is I wanted to help people. I felt like I couldn't do that at the bank. And I now had this sense of self-worth and confidence that I believed that I could do something. I'd always had a very hard work ethic, but it was mostly because I was so hard on myself that I wouldn't let myself fail. And it oftentimes came at the cost of my health and things of that nature. So thankfully, I kind of always understood personal finance. It was just something that came naturally to me. I just understood how it worked. So I saved up a lot of money while I was working. I always had 2 jobs while I was going to school. I didn't buy anything. So I was able to save up a good little nest egg. And then I just knew that it was time to quit my job. I wasn't able to do what I felt like I could. And I felt like I had that ability on a platform like YouTube. And I originally told myself I wasn't going to be a personal finance YouTuber, and I still don't believe I am. But largely, I talk about more history, how history plays into what happened with the economy, because I think a lot of how we can understand what's going on today, we need to look back at previous decades. That gives us the answers to what's happening now. And it's all in pursuit of just trying to allow people to see that the life they're living is worth something, that the difficulties that are happening in the economy is not a reflection of who you are as a person. And really, I think it just stems from trying to provide as much kindness to others, to my community as I can, because I wasn't able to give it to myself. And I know how hard it is to live a life like that.
And the United States is when you were talking and describing what you want to do and your mission and your vision, I was thinking about the United States as an individualist society. So this kind of community spirit that you're talking about, do you think it's rare, or do you think it's normal? Is it something rare to you, do you think, or what do you think is going on there?
I think when my grandfather died, then my grandmother kind of secluded herself from our family also. So I didn't grow up with grandparents. I had an individual that was my parents' friend that ended up kind of stepping into the place of my grandfather, which unfortunately recently passed away. But I didn't grow up really having the typical family structure. Oftentimes I was alone, and that wasn't necessarily because my family didn't want to do things like that, or we weren't a friendly family. There was a lot of love, but I didn't believe that I was deserving of it. So there was a lot of times walking by myself, being by myself. What I got really blessed with was that I found a group of friends that I think we all kind of understood each other. And I saw how we all continuously step forward for each other. And so I saw that community is the way that you win. I wouldn't have been able to do anything that I'm doing now if it wasn't for those others. And as I began to love myself more, then I saw the need for community more and began to bring that love into myself. So I believe that you're absolutely right. I think that America is very individualistic, especially with social media. I think that we try to pretend that we're all a community, but largely we don't act as a community. And I think that that's what's desperately needed. And it's something that I want to do my best in paving that forward.
When you talk about moving, like this is a big step. So this is a massive step from the world of corporate finance into content creation. Your videos are taking off and they're really capturing an audience and capturing people's attention. But it wasn't all. I'm going to get into YouTube with you and your journey there, but I want to try and understand that decision to leave corporate finance, to step away from security into instability. Can you describe what that was like? How did you overcome that fear?
It's interesting because I actually had no fear. I felt more fearful for the life that I was going to live if I stayed at the bank than if I didn't make the decision. And largely, again, the reason that I wanted to paint the figure of the parent voice that I had was I knew the destruction I was going to do to myself if I didn't do something that would make myself proud. So typically, I'm a lot less fearful if I feel fear about doing what is not societally normal, because I'm much more scared of what I'll do to myself if I continue to do a path that I don't believe is along with my values or morally beneficial or in favor of my family or in favor of these things that I believe are important in my life. I also just felt like I had the obligation because I felt like I had the voice that could do something like this in terms of I feel like I understood the way to be able to share it to others, and I was able to see it at the bank. I saw thousands of people's the way that they lived their life and then what was shown in their bank accounts. So I felt like I had the unique opportunity to give it my best shot to do this. So now I look back and I'm like, I can't believe I made that decision. But when I made the decision, there was no fear. It just felt like this was what I had to do. And I was willing to give it my all.
And I've as I've been watching your channel, I noticed that the first number of months you were telling your story and talking about your reasons, but then it really started to capture people and took up when you went back to looking, using your analytical abilities and your understanding of finance to look at society and look at economy. Then you put up a bunch of videos, and we can put up some links and talk about them later, which are fascinating. You lent into what you know. And that's what kind of like drove this kind of success. Okay, so a couple of questions broad questions I want to ask you. First of all, what is the American dream?
I think that's a great question. And I think in my video, I was addressing that it seems to be very different for a lot of different individuals. Largely, it seems to be a consumerist dream. I will never say that owning a house isn't something that you should aspire to have. I think it provides stability for yourself, for your family, for generations to come. But largely, the way that Americans look at homes now is an investment and not a place of a foundation for a future. So I think that you could argue that that is a bit consumerist as well. Largely, I think that the America we live in now is not what the founding fathers built the foundation for. But thankfully, we still have those freedoms because of that foundation. So I think largely it's about finding ways to be able to give yourself the best shot at what I believe that you were put on the earth to do. I think that we all have a thing that we are supposed to do in our lives. And it doesn't matter if it's gigantic or very small, but I think that there's a lot of things that we are not able to do because we are having to lend our time to these other aspects. So I think it is all about pursuing what feels psychologically, spiritually, morally, physically right for yourself, and being able to do that in pursuit of lending out kindness in a community to other people. I have no interest in having 1 million subscribers and doing well if I don't have a family I'm close with, if I'm not benefiting my community, if I'm not actually changing the viewer's life. That's not interesting to me. So I believe the American dream, and maybe this is just me putting my perspective on it, but I believe that it is still about creating unity. We're supposed to be a united nation, and we're not. And I think it's about going back to that is what the fundamentals of the American dream is supposed to be.
Your version is a very European-esque version, right? I would say that many Americans would dispute your version. I would say many
Absolutely.
Americans would say you're from the South, you're based in Texas, right?
Yes, sir.
So the many Americans would say white picket fence, millionaire status, you work 9 to 5, you generate cash. Like the American dream is wrapped up in, well, it's wrapped up in job security. It's wrapped up in finances, and it's wrapped up in status. What you're talking about is a new American dream, right? That you're reaching for. So if I said, okay, in one of your videos, right, which you've identified that the unemployment rate that's quoted in US statistics is 3.9%, right? 6.5 million people. But that the more important statistic is the underemployed, which is 18.5. Where are my glasses? 18.5 million, or 7.4%. That's a staggering number. Who are the underemployed, Damon?
The underemployed would be individuals like individuals that have lost hope in pursuing a job. So it's very difficult to be able to go to Indeed or LinkedIn or all of these different factors. And if you get discouraged and you don't continuously apply, within 30 days, now you fall off. So now you are considered not in the unemployment, you're a discouraged. I don't know if you fit into the discouraged mark at that point, but you would just be considered underemployed. It also doesn't consider the amount of people that would be, say, retired folks that are now having to come back into the labor market because their pension, Social Security, whatever, isn't covering the bills. Underemployed would also be if I had a son that was 15, or a son or daughter at 15, I believe is the age, and they were helping me an hour a week doing the timestamps for my video. Well, now they are considered employed. So you would think that it would be the opposite of that. So that it's almost everything that it would be logically not what you would think. I myself haven't looked for a job in a while, so I'm considered underemployed. Or I would just not be considered in the labor force. I'm not participating in the labor force is the way that you would define underemployed. People that are having to work hours that do not provide the amount of revenue that they need to be able to support a life, they would be underemployed. But because they are working an hour and making $1 a week, they are considered employed. Can
they access social welfare services, Damon? Like, what is this? Like, it's a bleak. How bleak is this situation?
Yeah, it comes from a survey of 60,000 households, and it is not good whatsoever. All I have to do, I can't ask you, are you working? So I have to paint this little scenario for you, and I'm going to jot down whatever you say, and then I'm going to paint it into something. And I believe that the actual individual that's asking the questions now has less power. I think it's more digitally surveyed. But again, there's a lot of these aspects that's very black and white. And you could say, well, statistically, because we've been using this survey for a while, it's a good survey. And in certain ways, maybe. I mean, you get to have some congruent information, but I think largely it's just an inefficient way to be able to ask these questions. I don't understand how a 15-year-old that's helping rake the leaves once a month is considered employed. That doesn't make sense. Another underemployed metric would be college students entering the workforce. If they are a college student, they are not counted as in participating in the labor force. So what we're seeing largely is, I think, 2.4 million individuals are projected to graduate, I guess what would have been last month or in May. So those are more people trying to participate in the labor force that are not yet counted. And so we can see that unemployment, I believe, is at 4.1% now. And I don't know what the underemployment is, but I believe the numbers that we've been seeing are not accurate whatsoever. And I would suspect we're going to start to see this continuously increase. I also recently did a video about how entry-level jobs are difficult to achieve, practically impossible, because they no longer exist. So we're running into a situation where we're really facing a skilled shortage. And that's not because individuals are not skilled. It's because they are not meeting the metrics that are needed for these companies, because they no longer train. Colleges no longer give you the applicable skill sets in most cases to be able to meet the needs of these corporations, because they're not looking for the future, they're looking for the present. And so I think that at some point within the next couple of years, we're really going to see this begin to collapse, and it's going to be a much larger concern than what the White House is tweeting at the moment.
What are ghost jobs, fake jobs?
It's really, that's like the most disgusting aspect of this, I believe. 7 out of 10 hiring managers in a survey of 650 believe that ghost jobs are morally acceptable. What a ghost job would be is if you do not have the position to be filled, or you could, but you don't necessarily plan on actually using a candidate to fill that position. There's a multitude of different reasons you could do it. One would be to provide hope for your skeleton crew you have now, that we are trying to reach out to a candidate to be able to fill this position, so you guys will have an extra person to help with the workload. Typically, that's not actually the case. Then they will say, well, people don't want to work anymore, or they're not skilled enough, or all of these other things that they will say. Another one of the reasons is to use it as a way to harvest data of what is the labor pool looking like right now. Let's write down the top 10 applicants, so when things begin to get worse or we do need a position, I'll reach out to them. They'll be more desperate for a job. I can pay them less. Another reason that I think that I'm trying to figure out is I believe that there might be financial incentive for them to be doing that. I can't find that anywhere. But when I was working throughout the bank and the pandemic happened, there was a lot of businesses that started coming in, taking in very large PPP loans. And so I wonder if in some
Payment
sort
protection
of
plans, are they?
Yes, sir. And that's what companies were the government was giving corporations large sums of funds to be able to support themselves throughout the pandemic. So I saw companies that I knew for sure should not be getting these kinds of funds in their accounts. And then it largely allowed them to be able to grow and to survive. But I wonder how much of that is still needed to say that they're growing, or I'm not exactly sure. That's just a hypothesis, but I think that there's a lot more that we will begin to find as time goes on, because I believe that this is happening a lot larger than even the surveys report.
You've said that I think one statistic you referenced was that 98.8% of Fortune 500 companies use an ATS. So this is an applicant tracking system. These are ubiquitous everywhere in Europe as well. What's the problem with an ATS, using an ATS?
Well, I think what you would hope for, an ATS is not an artificial intelligence service, but it is a large technological service that you would hope would remove human bias. But just like most artificial intelligence, the issues that we're going to run into is that people are programming the artificial intelligence. People are programming the ATS. So if you say, if you have a list of things that you would want an applicant to have, and they're more like wish lists, but you want it to be 5 years of experience, recently college graduate, whatever it is that you want, and you put that in there, well, the ATS is going to pretty much exclude almost everyone, because they're not going to have 5 years of experience or 3 years of experience with a recent college degree. I think a lot of this is also just a tool, I think, that people could put into the ATS system to a point to where it's almost impossible for any candidate to be able to go through that, because that supports the ghost job. I believe that's why a large reason for people doing these applications never hear back is because it never goes anywhere. It just goes into a void, and the ATS system flags it. And so what we're seeing is we're watching ChatGPT compete with an ATS survey, and the ATS is only getting more improved. And so we're just having this system of AIs practically fighting each other. And it's not getting anywhere. If you're actually able to get through an ATS survey, or the system, you're most likely don't have the skills that the company actually is wanting on those lists. So then you go to a third-party interview person that is going to be like, okay, they're not meeting these things, then you're gone. If you somehow happen to get through that, then you go through an HR interviewer, and then you get to a hiring manager interview. So what the hiring manager is requesting compared to the HR team, compared to the third-party interview, compared to the ATS, compared to what is actually on your resume, because ChatGPT had to prioritize keywords instead of skills, just shows that this is massively inefficient and very, very discouraging. And
And the thing I was thinking about when you were talking about that in one of your videos was, clever people can game a system, right? So you would have smart candidates who develop systems to get through the ATS, the bottleneck of the ATS, and potentially secure or acquire a job that would be more suitable for somebody else. With every system, there are flaws, and the ATS is something that does concern me as well. You're eliminating so much of the talent pool based on the assumption that you're going to be inundated with waves of applicants, right? Which could be happening, especially for those tech jobs, right? We assume that could be happening, but there's no human at an early stage looking carefully and using nuanced contextual thinking to read a CV, take the time to read a CV, because we know that recruiters won't read CVs anymore. They'll spend a couple of seconds. This is a problem. So this is causing problems for Americans as well. Okay, so there's another couple of fascinating numbers I wanted to throw up here and run by you again. You said that over 50% of SaaS roles are requiring 3 to 5 years of experience, so SaaS, software as a service. What I wanted to ask you about is, what about character and personality? How are we testing for character and personality? How are we testing for grit? How are we testing for work ethic? How are we testing for values? Like, how do you build that into an ATS?
You absolutely can't. We're not testing for it. And that's the largest issue that these companies are running into, is that most people that, like you mentioned, are able to pass through the ATS, through all these levels of interviews, and finally get to the job, typically with a lower wage than they should be getting paid, are typically the people that are the most desperate, or the people that gamify the system, the people that there's no way you go through that process and then you feel entirely grateful for this company. You have a bit of resentment already built in. And so what companies are finding is that they're not liking the candidates that are actually getting picked. 85% of employers feel that they are not grabbing skilled talent. And of those that are skilled, they can only hold on to 7% of them. And that's because the system is so not built on conversations like this. You also have an issue that we're running into with hiring managers are not wanting to work with recent college graduates or younger individuals. And I think that this is a very complex discussion. But one of the biggest reasons is because whenever they are having an interview, they're not looking the hiring manager in the eye. The second I think that's the second. The first one is that younger individuals are expecting too high of salaries. And I think that's because the economy is quite poor right now and wages are very bad. So I don't think that is actually I don't know what they're asking for in terms of a salary, so I can't even comment on that necessarily. But then they don't look each other in the eye. The third one is that they don't even turn the camera on during interviews. The fourth one is that they don't dress professionally. And the fifth one, at 19% of younger candidates are bringing their parents into the interview. This is things that just shows you, I don't think we blame younger individuals for this. It's because we don't have a society where it's important to, when the pandemic happened, it was, you can no longer be within 6 feet of someone. You don't shake their hand. You almost don't want to look at them because they could provide harm to you and your family. And so we're dealing with the repercussions of that, of a individualistic society that is now even more propelled in a way of, let's not even have human interaction. Every single morning I go for a walk around my apartment complex and I try to wave to people that are passing by or driving by. The majority of them never see me. They don't do anything. It's weird when you walk by someone and typically their head goes down. You don't want to have that eye contact. And so I think that not only are we losing our skill sets in terms of production in the workforce, we're also losing our skill sets as a society in terms of human interaction. And so the candidates that are, I think it's becoming the responsibility of the corporation or of a company to be able to reinforce these skill sets, but in a way that's not, I can't believe you never learned this as a kid, a very negative view on it. It's just, hey, this is going to be a priority. I know that this is how you dress. Do you think that we could maybe adjust it just a little bit? Canada or other people value this, and I think that it would allow you to do better in the workforce or something like that, in a way of doing a positive spin on it. and not just younger individuals are lazy. Let's now make it even more difficult for younger individuals to get a job. That doesn't make sense to me.
And you're still in your 20s, right? Am I right in saying that?
24. Yes,
24. Sir. I mean, you're still very young. Would you say that there's an issue around emotional resilience and sensitivity with your generation, or is that what's your perspective there? I don't want to be too negative because I know the issues that young people are facing.
I think it's very diverse. I think in a large magnitude of ways, it's very easy to look at the society we're in and want to give up, to feel that I can no longer talk to a girl in a way that doesn't make me feel like I'm a predator, and can no longer talk to a guy in a way that's not like a competition, vice versa. It seems like all of the dynamics are very complex now. I feel that as a whole, I've unfortunately had two friends that have lost their battle to mental health, and I faced it myself. I think largely, I think that we're resilient. I think the difficulty that we're having is we just don't know the direction to embark on. I believe it's incredibly important for individuals to have a path, to have a pursuit, to have a target to aim for. We don't have that. It's hard to be like, to necessarily feel like I want to have a family in a society like this, where they can't even pay the bills now, can't find a job anywhere. They don't feel like they have a community with their neighbors. They don't feel like, all of these different levels that goes into it. So I think that maybe people are giving up a little too quick. I don't know if I can necessarily blame them. I don't think that's the right pursuit. I think that there's also a lot of distractionary tools that people are escaping to. We're in a world that's incredibly easy to escape. It is so easy for me to pick up my phone right now and do a whole nother world of different explorations, or to turn on the TV, or to play video games, or to participate in other activities. And in some ways, you can make the argument, why would you not do that when the world that we live in now is so discouraging? And I think that's a question that we need to have more conversations on, because there is a lot of great things happening in the world. We just need to talk more about that. There are targets to aim for. There are things to set your path on. But when we're in an economy and a world that is propelled by bad news of, it's far easier to do a video on something bad than it is to do a video on something good. And so I think that I wouldn't just put the blame on young individuals. I think that there needs to be more help from older individuals, sharing experiences, sharing these other things, coming together, than to just put blame and say younger generations are weak or they complain too much. I think most people would be doing the same thing if we just switched generations.
Another thing you've done that's quite interesting, right, is you've explored the possible minimalism versus consumerism, right? So let's chat about that for a second. In one of your videos, you talk about Edward Bernays and how he manufactured consent. Chomsky wrote a book called Manufacturing Consent, which he took a little bit from Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays was obviously the PR genius who was the cousin of Sigmund Freud, I think. He talked about creating emotional ties, and you mentioned this, to trust and attaching it to a corporation, right? This is a kind of sickness in many ways. There's deception and there's sleight of hand, I'm saying, is woven into the marketing here to drive consumption. Can you remind people about this concept of manufacturing consent and consumerism, what your perspective is on that?
Yeah, it's really disgusting. Edward Bernays manufactured consent, and I'm missing the name of the individual that was really involved in who was kind of creating the news right around that same time, and he engineered consent. So you have two different tactics that was going on. When you think about a lot of what was happening, is corporations were filling the need of the consumer. I think it's hard to argue that a fridge doesn't make a big difference in your life, or a dishwasher, or a washer, dryer, even a TV. These certain things can add a benefit to your life, but eventually then you're supposed to go on the pursuit of what is psychologically better for you, spiritually better for you, these other aspects. It's supposed to be a tool to help in your life. So you can only consume so many aspects of that until your need is satiated. What they needed to do is they needed to create more ways for you to feel like you always needed to consume, that what you are doing is never enough, and that the next iPhone, the next watch, the next whatever the case is going to be is going to fill that need. So the way that you do that is you target the emotion. So someone like myself, dealing with as much insecurities and lack of confidence when I was younger, I was a huge consumer of needing to fit every single or wear every single popular item in high school. And it wasn't in pursuit of I wanted to look better. It was I wanted to blend in. I didn't want to be seen. And my thought was, well, if I wear the Nike shirt with the blue swoosh that I saw the popular kid at high school wear a couple days before, well, then I can just blend in. And so what we do, and you can see it in high school, it's just a breeding ground for this consumerist kind of hierarchy of status of if you wear Birkenstocks when they're not fashionable, then your family must be poor. You have all of these like weird things that gets tied into it. And so emotionally, what you begin to think of is, I'm going to be so successful, I'm going to have these particular items, and then that will show them. The likelihood is that person will never think of you again. When you have those particular things, you're still going to have the trauma of when you were younger. And so what you're going to do is to continue to pursue it because, well, how did these shoes not make me feel fulfilled? Well, maybe it's because I actually need to have this, or I'm not working hard enough, so I need to have this. So what you're doing is it's manufacturing that path of which you feel you need to pursue. And again, we need to be using the items in our lives as tools to be able to assist you on your path, not a path that's been manufactured and engineered for you to pursue. I have no desire to grow and to make money to then buy something. For me, I want to find ways that I could begin to hire people that are a part of my community to be a part of the channel, to be able to, and it's interesting that you mentioned politics. My thought was always, I don't think you win politics as a politician. I think that you win it becoming so big that they can't maneuver your trajectory. So I always thought if I had enough money supporting myself and I had a large enough voice and I had a strong enough community, then I can make a difference. So yeah, politics isn't something I talk about, but it's part of the path. So I definitely have large things that I want to do, but I never want to feel like I'm going to be manipulated by somebody else. And being able to have your own path and your own money allows you to be able to have that trajectory set in place, I believe.
And when you're talking about young people and their vulnerabilities, one of them, obviously, their greatest vulnerability, especially teenagers, is the fear of social exclusion, right? So
absolutely,
participating, all of the marketing geniuses know this. How you sell to a teenager is you terrify them with the possibility of social exclusion. They won't have the coolness that everybody else has. But you, as a very young man, as a 24-year-old, your life path, your trajectory, your own journey is very inspiring for a number of different reasons. In terms of your own social group, you're from a red state, right? Would you be an exception to the rule, or is this what you're doing? Is this a trend? Is this like is there a new wave of young minimalist, non-consumerist, forging ahead young Americans, or are you an exception to the rule, do you think? An anomaly, if you like?
Yeah, the interesting thing is I live in a red state and I'm surrounded by a blue city. So it's an interesting combination of both worlds. I feel that what I see with my close-knit friends is we're all very similar. The people that I believe reach out to me on YouTube, I believe that we're very similar. I think that we're at like a 50-50 divide. I think there's a lot of people that are so hyper consumerist, especially with social media. The average person does a $754 impulse purchase on social media a year. I couldn't ever imagine that. That's not even fathomable in my mind. But then there's a large portion of people that are, I don't want these material goods. I want my life to be in pursuit of something. I think that you can see, it's really difficult to not see how much pain a lot of people are in. And so I think that if you just have some of the right components and you have empathy and you care, I think it's hard not to have your mission become, I want to help people not be in as much pain. So when I look at my friends, they're all doing drastically different things, but it seems to be the fundamental of, I want to make sure that I'm doing okay. I want to make sure my family's doing okay. So then I can pursue helping others. I don't know if that's because that's what I am like, and so I attracted people that are like that. So, but I think that it's actually far larger than what you would think looking at social media and what the news paints Gen Z people to be. I believe that we're a lot more resilient, a lot more thoughtful, and a lot more caring than we're led on to be.
I have a suspicion, as an observer watching the United States from the outside, that the individualism of the past is being supplanted by a new wave, a coming wave of young Americans, which I think is very, very exciting to see. Young Americans that are looking for meaning and purpose and are not just going to go into the machine. And if you like, the machine can produce wonderful things, right? It can produce the white picket fence. It can produce the house. You can source and fund and build a family around that for 20, 30 years. But then, of course, those long-term jobs don't exist anymore, do they?
No, absolutely not.
30-year jobs, they're gone.
They're gone, and the likelihood that it will provide the resources for you to be able to. It's funny because it's so you work a job to provide the white picket fence to be able to support your family, to be able to have a car and do the vacation, and you do the vacation to escape your work. You drive the car to get you to work. You drive, or you have the home to be able to go to sleep when you're done working. And rarely do you spend the quality time with your family because you're working. So it's a false narrative. It doesn't work to begin with now. It did work in the 50s when you had more leisure time. You had more, what Americans call disposable income. You had the ability to, I think largely, I would say, spend time with your family. I think that didn't happen still because the dynamics were different. But that doesn't exist anymore. And so I think that we need to begin to see that the traditional way of pursuing those things needs to be changed, or else you're going to always be on this kind of hamster wheel of just running. I think the issue that I will say with the younger generation is I do feel like they may be overly individualistic in some regards. I think, like I mentioned with my close community, it's in pursuit to help others. But I think some people, what I'm seeing, are getting lost in I want to make sure I'm okay. So maybe there's three different categories of just hyper consumers, traditional routes, then people of I'm going to make sure I'm okay because I deserve this. And then the other kind of route of I want to make sure I'm okay so my family will be okay, so then I can help others. So it's kind of this like a trifecta of people blending and trying to find their way to pursue what it is that's going on.
In a recent poll, I think it was a Pew poll that surveyed young Americans in college and university, and they were asked what profession would they like to do most. 54% of them said, guess what?
Yeah, YouTube. Content creator, yeah.
Content creator. Right. What do you think what's going on there? What's driving that? What's inspiring that?
Well, I think humans naturally are creative creatures. So I think that you want to have the ability to create. I think that's a way to to revolt, to be resilient from the system we're in, which is very anti-creativity. I think it also gives the illusion that it allows you to be able to travel all over the world, that you'll have more free time. And some people are able to have that be the reality that they live in. But so I think that that's part of it. I think largely, though, people want the acknowledgement. They want the eyeballs. They want the voices to reinforce that they are a good person, that they are these certain things. And I understand the pull. I always wanted to be a YouTuber since I was in high school. I shared it on one of my videos that I really struggled, like I've discussed multiple times on this conversation. But there was one fitness YouTuber that I would watch every day during lunch. I would go to the library and I would lay in the back and I would watch him, and he gave me hope. I was always very tall but very skinny. And so he propelled me to start working out and to promote my fitness. And in a lot of ways, he is what helped me become part of the person that I am today. And so I always said, when I as I begin to grow, I want to be a YouTuber so I can provide value to others and hope to be that person for them. So in a way, it is a little bit selfish, but largely what it is that I want to do is to just help other people. That's all I really care about. So I think that we're going to see a lot of people become content creators, but I think people are going to fail much larger than we think, because the foundation to be a successful content creator, I believe, really needs to be behind you want to help people, you're proud of what you're creating. This is so interwoven into you because it's going to get more difficult. Being a YouTuber now, doing a podcast now, is far more difficult than it was 5 years ago, especially 10 years ago. And so for you to be able to still bust through all of those walls that you're going to have to face, you have to have the determination of whatever it is your path is going to be. So if it's just for you to get eyeballs or to get acknowledgement, I don't think that that's going to be enough. And I think that you can already see that as a quote unquote consumer of content creation. I think people are beginning to get burnt out of these people that are kind of just these social media influencers that don't really have any value. They're just kind of a person that just promotes products, does trips, shows their food, and then will go on a platform as OnlyFans or things like that. It just kind of feels like it doesn't feel as genuine anymore. I think a lot of people are more curious on the path somebody's embarking on and then the person behind that. So people may be interested in my life only because of the value that I'm providing to them, instead of the inverse of they're interested in me, so then I try to take money from you or something like that. I think we're going to see that start to drop off a lot more here in the next couple of years.
What we're also going to see potentially, or what a lot of commentators are talking about on this side of the pond, is that we may be moving from the age of information to the age of audience, right? So those with audiences will be positioned and to leverage that in their own pursuits, right? So audience, I have a suspicion that YouTube channels and video channels will become as ubiquitous as LinkedIn profiles. In 5 years' time, employers are going to be asking you for your LinkedIn profile. Plus, well, by the way, can you send your YouTube channel, right, as well, and what your media presence. In Ireland over here, we're talking, the HSR education authorities are talking about building media production, editing, and all those skills at a high school level. And so the kids will be studying all of this at a high school level, like 14, 15-year-olds, how to produce and edit video, right? So content creation, it's about to explode, and we're about to move into the age of audience. Let's talk about your YouTube journey, right? So you started about a year, we'll say a year ago. We have videos maybe just over a year ago. About 4 months, things started to explode, right? Take me back to the beginning, and we'll get to why it exploded and how it exploded in terms of views, etc. So you start out, you're talking about your life and your experience in corporate. You tell the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I started out again with the perspective of I'm not going to be a finance YouTuber. So I didn't want to do that. And so I thought a way that I could maybe kind of point at some of the components of that, but not have to be strictly finance YouTuber, is talk about minimalism and consumerism. And then I got kind of, it really opened my mind up to the creativity that I wanted to do when I was younger, that I thought I can no longer draw or do these things because it's not going to produce money. And I went through all of that. So then I kind of shifted in my videos, and I was making these kind of little short films about these little different things. And then I was just getting kind of burnt out from that. I didn't feel like that was exactly what it was that I wanted to be doing. And so then I made another shift of, let me just do 3 videos a week and discuss these different components of how dopamine impacts your decisions, minimalism, frugal living, again, kind of painting around the corner of what it is that I decided to do now. Started to see some traction. That was great. And then I ended up having, I got pretty sick, and I had 10 blood clots in my lungs. And I was in the hospital, and I had a consumerism video that I posted 8 months ago that just popped out of nowhere. And I was laying there, and I was just thinking like that was one of the most I enjoyed making that video the most. I wanted to do more videos like that. That video didn't do well originally. And again, when you're trying to provide value, I'm not really making the content for myself. I'm making it for whatever the audience enjoys the most and is providing value. So as soon as I had that reinforcement that an audience is interested in that, I was like, this is what I'm doing. So as soon as I started getting healthier, I started pursuing that more. And then I want to discuss the importance of staying true to your values and having a trajectory. So I went to Colorado for 2 weeks. And so I made 4 videos so I could continue to post 2 videos a week while I was gone. I ended up posting 2 of them, and I didn't like the other 2. One of them was the real reason no one wants to work anymore. So I watched it and I thought, this is a good video. It could provide value. It's not the magnitude I feel that it deserves. I feel that I could do better. And so I took the risk of not posting for 2 weeks, the quote unquote risk for being a YouTuber. We have this idea that we have to post every week or whatever the routine is that you get in. And I decided it would be worth, quote unquote, having the channel fail than not putting out a video that I felt proud of and I felt that deserved what it needed. So I come back, and throughout that whole 2 weeks, I was just thinking about that video. I was thinking about the different ways that I want to discuss this. So then I end up making it, I film it, and then that's a video that went to over 600,000 views. And that has continued to be the backbone for all of my videos. I spend 40, 50, 60 hours a week for each video. And financially, I'm not remotely close to bringing that in. But it doesn't matter. I'm doing it because that's what I feel it deserves. And that's what I feel that the audience deserves. And I think largely when you put yourself in that path, in that trajectory, you have a target and you aim. I think if you want to get a little spiritual or philosophical, that the universe begins to provide that. I think as the audience,
in your direction.
I think when you watch that video, you can feel something. You can feel there's more than, I'm making a YouTube video, so I hope that I get some AdSense and I want to grow the channel. It feels like there's something different. And that's because there is something different. And so I feel that really when I began to know this is a trajectory that I want to do, and I am not going to ever break away from my morals and what it is that I believe in, then I think that this is the path we're going to do. And that's then when you see the quote unquote success that's been happening. So yeah, something that is still is shocking to me to see, but yeah, thankfully I don't get hung up in the numbers too much. Of course you do some. You're growing a YouTube channel, so you look at it, and as a human being, it's weird to see more eyeballs on you. You know, typically you want to blend in. You don't want to be the main person. So that's stuff that I'm continuously working on, but largely it's all about the comments I get of people saying that this is giving me answers to the concerns or things that I'm facing in my own life. And so yeah, I just keep pursuing that.
Why does no one want to work anymore, Damon?
Yeah, it was funny because people really ripped me for that. I was almost like making people do want to work. I think that human beings want to provide value. Largely, that's why you see when people retire from the workforce and they pass away shortly after, they don't have something to physically work on, mentally work on, spiritually work on. I think that you do want to work. People do want to work. It's the system that we're a part of that almost is incentivizing you not to work. And then you go back to the real reason it feels impossible to find a job is the system is not set in place for candidates to get skills, to be able to be efficient in the workforce, to be able to provide actual goods and services that provide value to then the consumer. It's more, let's take shortcuts, market in a way to trick the consumer into buying goods so we don't have to do the back end investment. So yeah, I would say people absolutely do want to work. They want to do it in a way that they feel fulfilled, in a way that provides wages, that provides some sort of standard of living, and also isn't just a complete waste of time. Most jobs are just an absolute waste, and they most likely will be replaced by AI. And I think in the short term, that really is going to damage people that need jobs, and it's going to hurt the economy. But I think in terms of a human perspective, hopefully throughout society, that'll actually be a good thing. I'm hoping that this will shift people to spending their time on different things than what we're just mindlessly doing now.
I agree. I've had arguments with people about this. I feel that humans should not be working on checkouts. And I've got in trouble for saying that. I don't, human beings should be, if AI can do those roles and allow for human beings to explore their own essence, their own consciousness, their own, a little bit of meaning, fantastic, but is going to be some short-term pain. Okay, so 54%, we think 54% of Americans, if the numbers are correct, are going to be following you, Damon, into content creation. What would your message be to them, the ones that are following behind?
I think the most important thing is to first make sure that you are ready to do it. I had a social media video that kind of popped, and so analytically, I saw, okay, I kind of understand how you could make a video do well. And then that's when I was like, okay, I'm gonna for sure quit my job now. At 500 subscribers, it was just something that clicked inside of me that I kind of understood. And but what I didn't do is take care of myself. That was the reason that I ended up getting the blood clots. Is continuously, I had in the month of January, I had more nights that I slept less than 5 hours than I slept more than 5 hours. And I had just as equivalent nights that I slept 3 hours as I did 8. And I was continuously just trying to perfect my craft of what it is that I'm doing. And I got really sick. And then what you have to realize is that if you are not here to be the creator, then you're not creating, you're not doing what it is that you want to do. So the first investment has to come into yourself. Now, I go to school to become a therapist. So I believe that you need to work on yourself psychologically, spiritually, that you could say mentally in a different magnitude, and then physically. I think that those are all components that are important. The next thing is to just trust in yourself that you're going to be able to handle the failures. Your first 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, even 100 videos could be absolute quote unquote failures. But when you begin to shift it and think each video is me one step closer to the video that is going to do what it is that needs to do, you begin to think of each video that took far too long or too short, or all these different aspects is just learning experiences. Then there's no longer failures, and it makes the process a lot easier. Then I would say too is make sure that's in alignment with your values. Make sure that you feel that you're really making a difference. It's hard for me in those nights where, and I still do it. For the last entry level video, I had back-to-back nights where I slept a combined 7 hours I had 7 hours of sleep, and I would work from 10 until 3 in the morning. I would just sit there, and the only time I would walk would be to go to the bathroom, and then my girlfriend would have to cook food. And I still don't do it in a healthy manner, but largely it's getting better. But those nights when it's 3 in the morning and my elbows are hurting and my wrists are hurting and my eyes are dry, I think this is making an impact on somebody else's life. And this feels good for me too. I feel like if I was the audience, I would also watch this and this would provide value to me. So I think when you have a real source of value that you're trying to hit, that's going to allow you to push through some of these walls. I think some of those late nights is absolutely crucial for you to be able to be quote unquote successful in this. You have to do what everybody else is not willing to do. I think you also have to realize for you to excel in something like this, you have to not do what everybody else is doing. If in some ways you will see the algorithm will work for a topic of the same, like I did a video where it's why looking poor is important. Other people did the same title. I couldn't think of a different way to say that in a way that I felt really drug the topic home. But what was inside of the video was drastically different. So I think don't discourage yourself from being different. This is a time, content creation is one of the only aspects of society that favors the person that's different. If everybody was like Mr. Beast, Mr. Beast isn't Mr. Beast. If everybody is like all of these other, if everyone was like the fitness influencer that really changed my life, then that probably wouldn't have made a difference in my own life, because I could have watched.
Influencer, Damon?
His name's Callum von Moger, which is interesting because within the past 5 years, or really 10 years, he tore his bicep. He then tore his quad and his bicep again. Had really bad mental health issues. Both of the pets he had then died. Then his brother committed suicide, and so I saw his whole mental health journey take part. And then to see him overcome that again. So it helped in ways knowing that as I was experiencing that, so was he. And it again helped. His was so different than mine, but it helped me in the back of my mind knowing that this is not just me. So I think also then that would go to the next part of being authentic. And a lot of the ends of my videos, I will say I probably got some things wrong. I'm 24. I just started researching these topics. I somewhat understand it, but to be able to deliver facts of this magnitude and things like that, I still largely have no idea what I'm doing. So I try to just address that. I don't want to say that I know what I'm doing or that I'm perfect or that I'm, anything like that. I think as long as you allow for authenticity to be able to be promoted, your community is going to feel that too. I think that they might feel less, quote unquote, embarrassed to say something in a comment or to reach out to you or things like that. I think that having values authenticity really allows for a strong community to be built. I always think I want a community that's going to want to be here in 5 to 10 years from now. I think that's what's important. I want to know what I try to, if someone does a good comment, I try to make sure that I remember the aspects of that comment. When they comment again, I want to say, hey, great to hear from you again. Thank you. And unfortunately, as more comments are coming, it's getting harder for me to be able to do that. But I still set specific times of my day. I'm going to go outside. I'm just going to respond to comments the whole day or this whole period of time. So I think also I think it depends on the way that you want to do it. But I think some people will do a video of like top 10 journals to use to change your life, and it'll get 5 million views. And then they'll be like, well, I don't want my channel to be about journals. So then they do this soccer ball is the best one, and it gets 400 views or something like that. And then they kind of do this back and forth of, I don't want to be a journal video or channel, but every time they post a journal video, it does exceptionally well. I think what you do
Audience
is
capture.
you can, yeah, I think that you share certain aspects in these videos, and maybe you have a journal and then you just tear off to like a pin, and you tear off to these other things to where eventually you get to what you want to talk about. I didn't want to talk about minimalism for my entire channel history, but I knew that that would allow me to lead into some other components. Frugal living was a really good middle ground for that. And then it got into consumerism, which I feel much happier about. But at some point, the channel probably will dive into politics as I get closer to doing that. But I'm doing it as a natural progression. And I try to remove my egoic desires or my egoic creativity that I want to promote, and do more of, well, what does the audience need right now? And how can I deliver this in a way that paints this picture of what it is that I'm trying to do.
The lesson that I'd like to share is when I was watching your videos is the work ethic that went into those particular videos, right? As a young man, I was watching your earlier videos, and then I could see the editing, the work that went in, the craft, and my background is in filmmaking, and I could see it all there. That's the lesson I'd like to share as well with people who are following. To do those videos at that level is going to take an awful lot of work. You mentioned 40, 50, 60 hours a week. If you're prepared to do that, you will get the kind of results that Damon got. But my God, there's a lot of work, and you have them at the top of your, and they're fascinating videos. They've reached me in Ireland, like 5,500 miles away. So last question, the obvious one is, what does the future hold for your channel? First of all, you've touched on it there about politics and stuff. How are you going to go in that direction, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think I'll continue to do videos about the labor market, because I think it's such a complex conversation. There's a lot of different things that I want to paint on. I want to talk a lot more about consumerism. I want to talk more about, I think at some point I'll bring in little conversations about politics. And I would say maybe I think it depends on the magnitude in which I continue to push, but maybe in 2 years, it's a little bit more politics and finances. But again, I think what's in store is just to continue to have content that's going to be improving and more value that's going to be coming. I don't know the timeline of things, but I'm ready to be able to evolve as this goes. I continue to go to therapy, and the main targets that we're trying to achieve is for me to be prepared for when larger audiences do come, when they need more things, when there's time for me to step up and deliver more. So that's what I'm working for. So it's continuously being ready to help out as much as I possibly can. I think I just hope that, that people continue to enjoy it. So
and the future
I don't know.
Future for Damon Cassidy?
That's the unfortunate thing, is like I continue to say, is that it's important to take care of yourself. I'm not doing the greatest job at that. I'm doing far better than if you would have seen it months ago. But to be able to do this, I don't really have a life. I work out every day with one of my closest friends. One of my other closest friends, we try to get together as much as we can. That's pretty limited. I have a girlfriend, and unfortunately, that's been hard to navigate with how much time is being spent to this. And so that's a challenge in itself. And so I don't know. I hope that it continues. I hope that I can find a balance in this. It is a little bit difficult because I feel like this is a part of my calling, and I want to give it the best shot that I can. And I think there's a little bit of that kind of feeling of that a superhero will give everything he can to be able to provide good for the other person. And that's something I'm kind of trying to break, because Damon needs to be healthy too. And that's something that I'm working on. So I'm hoping here soon to do a kind of like a men's retreat, to be able to I can't think of the program at this moment, but you go and you do like a walk throughout Sedona or something like that. And then you do a walk completely by yourself out into the desert at night, and you spend the night out there by yourself. And when you come back, you have to find your way back to the camp. The goal is that you have worked through the darkness within you, or you begin to kind of come back as more of a man. And so I think I'm going to be doing more of those things to work on my mental health, to work on my confidence. And there's Barton Springs here, which I really enjoy. So I need to make sure I swim a little bit more and do those little things I enjoy. But largely the focus is very much on the value that I can provide.
Well, you're certainly providing a lot of value to me, and I'm going to put links to your channel in the description and share it with my audience. And I wish you every success, and keep going, Damon. I think I'm a huge fan of your channel and what you're trying to do, and I was incredibly impressed with a number of those videos, and they were very, very inspiring. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That means a lot, especially about the work ethic towards the editing and things like that. That doesn't really get acknowledged too much, but that's a lot of hard work. So yeah, that makes me very happy. So thank you.
My pleasure. Damon Cassidy, thank you so much.
Thank you.